In this video, we're going to be authenticating a user profile via the SDK. Once you have authenticated a user profile, the SDK will take care of issuing and refreshing access tokens for you. We're going to authenticate our user here in the index screen, which will happen after the SDK has been successfully configured. I'm going to add a useState hook here so I can manage loading and authentication states. The authenticate function takes three values: app ID, app secret, and external ID. We can get the app ID and app secret by logging into the Sahha dashboard and going to the API credentials page. It's important that you don't store the app ID and secret in your code, as it could allow malicious actors to compromise your account. Ideally, you would store these server-side and retrieve them on app start, but for the sake of this demo, we'll just be hard coding them. The third value is external ID. For this value, you need to provide your own unique identifier, which you can use to identify the user. It's extremely important that your external ID does not contain any information that can be used to personally identify a user by a third party. The ideal external ID would be a newly generated UUID. For this demo, I'm just going to use a hard-coded ID. And here, I'm going to add an authentication function and a deauthentication function. Both functions call their corresponding SDK methods and manage the loading and authenticated state variables. In order to test the authentication and deauthentication, I'm going to add some UI elements and hook them up to the two functions. I've added a text element here to display the authentication status, so that we can see if the authentication is successful. Here, I have a button for each function so that we can test them out. I've also added some basic styling to the global styles file. I'm now running the app again to test the authentication. As we can see, the new index screen has loaded and authentication is false. I'm going to click on Authenticate Sahha, and there we go. We have now authenticated a profile, and we can see here that authenticated is now set to true. I'm going to click on Deauthenticate Sahha now to deauthenticate. We are now deauthenticated, and we can see that authenticated is now set to false. We now have the ability to authenticate Sahha user profiles using our account credentials in our React Native app.